Look Park is a 1974 experimental short film directed by Ralph Steiner, who was an avant-garde filmmaker, documentarian, photographer. This film specifically is kind of focusing on the idea of human observation, beauty in nature, just going out into nature and seeing it for what it is and seeing the beauty hidden in it, as well as the obvious beauty. I'm going to include a link to the short into the description because you can just watch it on YouTube, but I'll give a quick synopsis just for fun. The film starts out with an opening text crawl saying basically there are no camera tricks used in the film. This is just footage presented as is. The next thing we get is an establishing shot of the welcome sign to Look Park, specifically the camera zooming in on the word look. We get some footage of trees, reflections in the water, some little waterfalls, some swans, beauty of nature as self-evident. This is backed up by a warm orchestral score that really gives a nice atmosphere and completes the colored footage. We then switch to black and white. The score switches to something a little more electronic, abstract, and sparse. We have some black and white footage of reflections very close up, in such a way that really transforms them from looking like water falling to something a little more alien. Still beautiful, but with a different sort of aesthetic to it than the obvious beauty of the nature shots in color. So this film's thesis is formed by the text crawl and also the first establishing shot. The text crawl saying that, no camera tricks were used, getting across that this is human observable. You can go out to Look Park and you can see the beauty of nature yourself. The second thing is supporting this idea, and it is the zoom in on the word look in the Look Park sign. So those two combined are kind of getting across the idea that you can see the beauty of nature for yourself, which is simple enough, and this is a 10-minute short. So what's the problem with that? You can take logical steps with your thesis statement and still end up at a place that's not consistent with your thesis statement. So the thesis has basically two ideas, right? It's the idea of the beauty in nature and the idea of human observation. The first step the film takes to show this colored footage makes a lot of sense. This is stuff that's easily human observable. It is easy to tell that this is the beauty of nature. This is someone walking to a park and looking around. Very simple, very consistent with the thesis statement, both halves of it. The second part, the black and white footage, is where we take an illogical step. Because what the black and white footage does is only consider the beauty aspect. It does not consider the human observation aspect. While a human being could get up real close to the waterfall, look at the reflections, look at the way the water is falling off the rocks, etc., you cannot do what the film presents. You cannot get this otherworldly alien experience from looking at nature in this way. The way this footage, the black and white footage is presented, it gives such a strange, warping effect to the reflections as they kind of pass around rocks. It gives the water falling off the waterfall almost the appearance of like sparks flying from metal striking metal, which really is visually striking and it's beautiful, and I really like the way the footage is presented. But again, we're talking about the way this ties into the thesis statement. And the experience you get from watching this film is not consistent with the film's idea of going out and observing nature, because you cannot observe this otherworldly beauty that the film is presenting you with. Just to be clear, because I don't think I emphasized this well enough, the aspect of the black and white footage that gives the otherworldly quality of beauty is the black and white. It's the way the harsh shadows kind of strip away a lot of the detail, and you're left with just the parts of the water that look like sparks. You're left with less detail on the reflections in the water, and they just look like strange alien shapes morphing around. So if something like that was presented in color, like a human being would see it, you wouldn't get the same effect with, these strange faceless shapes looking back at you in the water. You would just get reflections, and you would get waterfalls, which are still pretty, but that would not give the same effect that the black and white footage gives. So it makes that second move to black and white in support of the idea of beauty in nature, but it leaves behind that element of human observation. So even though it's taking a step that makes sense with the thesis, it's motivated by the thesis in terms of the beauty, but it leaves behind the half about human observation. And that leaves it in an awkward spot. And I know it might seem a little bit weird that I'm picking on some random, 10-minute short film that no one's seen. But I think this is just a nice, quick illustration of, how you can quickly lose self-consistency if you're not careful to consider the whole body of what you've put together. Because, if you just look at the second half by itself, you're showing the beauty of nature. You can quickly say, like, yes, that fits with what we've established so far. Continue on. You have to consider it with a little more context than that. And I just think this film is a nice, quick example of how you can forget about certain elements of your film with regards to consistency.